Hey book readers, this is the B-Side Book Reviews, and it's a cold, icy night outside. And what better way to combat a cold, icy night than read a book? And tonight, we're going to look at Wyatt Earp's Frontier Marshal. Yes, so grab some coffee and bundle up. I've got my sweatshirt on. And we'll take a look here at Stuart N. Lake's biography of Wyatt Earp. Yes, it's 8 degrees outside. Wow. Is everyone packing their 6-shooters? Well, we'd better strap on our holsters because we're off to the Wild West. And what better way to do it than was one of the most famous lawmen in U.S. history, Wyatt Earp. Now, most every history buff out there knows who Wyatt Earp is, regardless if they remember him played in movies by the likes of Kevin Costner, Kurt Russell, Henry Fonda, or Burt Lancaster. But this isn't Hollywood. We have the real deal here. And oftentimes our real deal comes straight from the man himself. At least that's the impression we're getting here. In these pages, we get the first-hand account of the famous gunfight at OK Corral, to the point where we can smell the gunpowder. We read the wild accounts of Wyatt busting heads in rough and tough saloons, where we can nearly smell the beer and taste the blood. Okay, maybe it's not quite that dramatic, but I did feel like I personally got to meet up with the famous Earp family as they took on all the rowdy cowboys of Dodge City and Wichita, Kansas. Now, apparently, driving a herd of cattle up from Texas can get an old cowpuncher a mite restless, especially when the only females in sight for weeks at a time has 4 legs and a tail. Now, I'm guessing these cowboys got a bit wild after they got paid, and they couldn't wait to cut loose in these wild cow towns. But not so fast there, cowpokes. This is Wyatt Earp's town. And he was there to keep the town settled down for all the good normal folks of the frontier. Of course, this didn't make him so popular with all the local hoodlums and, the crooked lawmen. No doubt, our man Wyatt had plenty of enemies, and they seemed to follow him throughout our book here, all the way to Tombstone, Arizona, where there was actually a group of real thugs called, they called themselves the Cowboys. Now, they were a bit of an Old West mafia, so to speak. But, you'd think they could come up with a more original name. Cowboys? Really? Oh well, these pages here are just packed full of all the rootin', tootin', gun-shooting times of Wyatt Earp. And it's all true. Well, I think anyway. I'm guessing we can tell how great a historical figure is by how many movies have been made about him, or the caliber of Hollywood stars that took on his role. Now, I'd say Wyatt Earp is pretty high up on the list here. Okay, John Wayne never played him, but according to our authors, Wyatt Earp was only around 6 feet tall and only tipped the scales at about $1.60, where the Duke, on the other hand, was 6'4" and weighed well over 200 pounds. Now, to add to Mr. Earp's fame, there has been more than 10 movies centered around the guy. And even more remarkable, there's a Star Trek episode that takes on the famous shootout at the OK Corral. Now, that wasn't mentioned in the book, but such gives the opportunity for the bonding of the history geeks and the Trekkie nerds. Now, if the truth be told, Wyatt's brother Virgil was the more experienced and well-known lawman of the time. But apparently this book here made Wyatt a legend. Now, over the years, I've heard different views of our famous lawman here. I've heard that the guy was a bully and a womanizer. But we've got to remember that this was the Old West. And apparently, the stories of valor varied on who your friends were. Before Wyatt was plugging bad guys, the book goes into details, telling how he popped a few buffalo out on the prairie. Now, his times of big-time buffalo hunting is mentioned in one of the movies as well. And according to the web, though, such an outdoorsman activity might have been just a tall tale to cover up a time when Wyatt and his brothers were running a brothel. Yeah. Instead of plugging bison, he was pimping tails, so to speak. Strangely enough, Wyatt's lady friends aren't mentioned too much in these pages. Seems as though our famous lawman was spending all of his time with gunmen and part-time dentist Duck Holiday. Now there was the guy who was larger than life. Even though our book claims that the educated gunslinger only stood around 5'10" and weighed about 150 pounds, well, I guess if a guy is toting a pair of 6-shooters, he looks pretty darn big, I'd say. Although this isn't an autobiography, there are many pages where Wyatt himself takes over as if he's being interviewed. He might start an account with, "Yeah, that. Well, this is how that happened." Now, such gives me a little timeline when this book was put together, considering Mr. Earp died in 1929. So, a lot of Lake's writing here was a bit of a mixture between a Lewis L'Amour novel and my college history book here. Now, like a Lewis L'Amour book, our heroes seem to be fearless, flawless, and able to leap tall buildings at a single bound. However, like my college history book, I plunge into a daydream, concerning that really hot Wrangler I saw the last time I went horseback riding. Yeah, the one who was decked out in those really tight jeans. And before I would know it, I had drifted past an account of some no-good outlaw getting plugged by the Earp brothers, or who knows what else. But there were lots of good gunfights to read about here, or to daydream through, depending on your interest. Indeed, our author made the famous gunfight at the OK Corral come to life. He described how Wyatt, along with his brothers Virgil and Morgan and family friend Doc Holliday, marched for abreast, with their pistols hanging low on their hips. Indeed, such put visions in my head of Kurt Russell and Val Kilmer, or Kevin Costner and Dennis Quaid, or Burt Lancaster and Kirk Douglas, or Henry Fonda and Victor Mature, depending on what movie you watched. Yeah. Now, even though the gunfight lasted less than a minute, I could nearly hear the gunshots. Was there any truth to it? Who knows? Who were the real bad guys here? Who knows? Who really cares? I simply live for the glory of a good story. Okay, fact check here, folks. This book may be loaded with interviews from not only the man himself, but some of the other Western heroes that were out and about with Wyatt back in the day. But from reading on the web, I found out that this book is hailed as a bestseller, but a largely fictional biography. What? Did I really spend 3 weeks reading a non-historical biography? Now, apparently, this book came out in the height of the Great Depression in the 1930s, and the people ate it up because they were looking for anything to keep their mind off the fact that they were living in the Great Depression and maybe didn't have money for anything to eat. So, I'm guessing this book here was written with the let's think about the glorious past and ignore the crappy present in mind. Now, Wyatt Earp was virtually unknown until Stuart Lake here wrote this book. Who knows? Without this book, the term gunfight at the OK Corral might mean absolutely nothing to us now. The names Wyatt Earp and Doc Holliday might mean nothing to us as well. Oh my, let's think about that, huh? So, now I'm wondering if all those blessed moments in the book really happened. Did our author ever even talk to Mr. Earp? And was there really a Mr. Wyatt Earp to begin with? Oh, the agony of it all! Yeah. Were all those made-up lines in the movie and Tombstone actually made up? Am I to believe that Wyatt Earp didn't stand at a train station holding a shotgun, screaming out, "You tell them I'm coming, and hell's coming with me"? Okay, that movie line didn't even make the book. Perhaps the hardest part about reading this book was trying to figure out who were the actual good guys and who were the actual bad guys. Now, I would read one chapter where Wyatt Earp was a lawman hunting down the bad guys. Then, in the next chapter, the bad guys were the lawmen, and they were holding arrest warrants for Wyatt and his brothers. After all, in all the movies, Wyatt Earp did always wear a black hat. Think about that. Now, to confuse me even more, I kept reading where the bad guys were hauled off to the calaboose, which I'm guessing was some weird Western word for jail. Calaboose. It sounds like the end of a train that's headed for Paris, France. The calaboose. The calaboose. I don't know. I thought it was weird. So, that was Wyatt Earp Frontier Marshal by Stuart N. Lake. Was it all true? Who knows? Who cares? But I would recommend it for any history buff, especially a Western history buff. Tonight, I would recommend a book for anyone because it's still freaking cold outside. Read a book. Just stay inside. Just keep warm.